Sam sat on the worn wooden steps of his family's porch, staring out at the horizon. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in soft streaks of orange and pink, but Sam hardly noticed. His bright green eyes, always carrying a weight far too heavy for a 9-year-old, seemed lost in a world of their own. A world where silence was his constant companion. Sam wasn't like the other kids. While they shouted and laughed on the playground, his voice stayed locked deep inside, tangled up in knots he couldn't untie. His speech disorder wasn't something anyone could see, but it was a wall he lived behind every single day. Words came to him like birds with broken wings. At school, Sam blended into the background. His small frame, slouched posture, and downward gaze made him nearly invisible. His classmates hardly noticed him, except when they whispered to each other or cast curious glances his way. The teachers tried their best, offering kind smiles or giving him extra time with assignments, but even they struggled to truly reach him. Sam didn't mind being overlooked. In fact, he preferred it. Talking was hard, but the stares and pity that came with his silence were even harder. At home, things weren't much easier. His parents loved him dearly, but they didn't always know how to help. Dinner was often a quiet affair, with his mom asking simple yes or no questions and his dad trying to fill the silence with stories about his day. They had tried everything: speech therapy, special programs, even a few experimental techniques, but nothing seemed to break through the heavy silence that wrapped itself around their son. One evening, as Sam sat in his usual spot on the porch steps, his parents stood inside the house, talking quietly. His mom's voice, soft and full of concern, drifted through the screen door. "I just hate seeing him so alone, Mark. He needs something to connect with." His dad sighed. "We've tried so many things, Sarah. What else can we do?" There was a pause, and then his mom spoke again, her voice carrying a hint of hope. "What if we got a dog? A companion? Someone who doesn't need words to understand him?" Inside, Sam heard the word dog and felt a flicker of curiosity. He didn't move or turn around, but his hand paused in mid-tug, and his green eyes seemed to brighten just a little. His dad hesitated. "A dog? I mean, it's a big responsibility, Sarah. What if it doesn't help?" "Maybe it will," his mom said gently. "And even if it doesn't, at least Sam won't feel so alone. A dog doesn't care if you can't talk. They just care if you're kind." For the first time in weeks, Sam felt a tiny spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't big or overwhelming, but it was enough to make his heart feel a little lighter. That night, as Sam lay in bed staring up at the glow-in-the-dark stars on his ceiling, he imagined what it might be like to have a dog. A soft, warm presence by his side. A wagging tail and eager eyes that wouldn't judge him for the words he couldn't say. He didn't smile, but the corners of his lips twitched, as if they wanted to. His mom and dad peeked into his room before heading to bed, and though Sam pretended to be asleep, they noticed the relaxed look on his face. For the first time in what felt like forever, they went to bed feeling a glimmer of hope themselves. The silent world Sam lived in wasn't easy, but maybe, just maybe, a furry friend could teach him that sometimes love didn't need words at all. The Saturday sun was warm and bright as Sam sat in the back seat of the car. His mom and dad were up front, chatting quietly, but Sam wasn't paying much attention. He stared out the window, watching the trees and houses blur together. He wasn't sure how to feel about today. Visiting an animal shelter sounded nice, but he didn't want to get his hopes up. What if none of the dogs liked him? Or worse, what if he couldn't connect with them? When they arrived at the shelter, the air buzzed with the sound of barking dogs. It was a small building with faded paint and a sign that read "Hopeful Paws Animal Shelter." Sam held his mom's hand tightly as they stepped inside. "Hi there," a kind woman at the desk greeted them. She had short, gray hair and wore a shirt with a paw print on it. "Looking for a furry friend today?" Sam's mom smiled. "We're hoping to adopt a dog for our son. Something gentle and good with kids." The woman nodded. "You've come to the right place. Follow me, and I'll show you the dogs we have." They walked down a long hallway lined with metal cages. Inside, dogs of all shapes and sizes wagged their tails, barked, or simply stared with hopeful eyes. Sam's mom and dad chatted with the woman, asking questions about the dogs, but Sam stayed quiet. His green eyes darted from one cage to the next. Then he stopped. In one of the cages, a sleek black and white border collie stood with its tail wagging furiously. The dog's coat was shiny and smooth, and its eyes were sharp and bright, full of energy and curiosity. The name Aero was written on a small tag hanging from the cage. Aero noticed Sam right away. He tilted his head, as if trying to figure out the boy, then pressed his nose against the cage bars. His tail wagged even harder, thumping against the sides of the cage like a drumbeat. Sam stood frozen for a moment, staring into Aero's eyes. Then, very slowly, he reached out his hand. Aero leaned in, his wet nose brushing Sam's fingers, and let out a soft whine. Sam's heart skipped a beat. He knelt down, so he was eye level with the dog. Aero licked his hand, his tongue warm and rough, and for the first time in weeks, Sam smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small curve of his lips, but it was enough to make his mom gasp softly. "I think he's chosen us," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Sam's dad crouched down beside them. "What do you think, buddy? Should we take him home?" Sam nodded, his smile growing just a little bit wider. The kind woman from the desk unlocked the cage and clipped a leash to Aero's collar. The moment the door opened, Aero trotted out and nuzzled against Sam's leg, as if he'd known the boy his entire life. Sam's mom wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered to her husband, "I think this is exactly what he needed." The paperwork felt like it took forever, but finally, Aero was officially theirs. As they walked out of the shelter, Aero stayed close to Sam's side, his tail wagging with every step. When they got to the car, Aero jumped into the back seat and settled beside Sam. The boy rested his hand on Aero's fur, stroking it gently. The dog leaned into his touch, letting out a happy sigh. For the first time in a long while, Sam didn't feel quite so alone. As the car turned onto their street, Sam looked out the window, but this time, the world didn't seem so gray. It felt brighter, warmer, and a little less quiet. All because of a dog named Aero. From the moment Aero stepped into their home, everything changed. The house no longer felt so quiet, and Sam no longer felt so alone. Aero followed Sam everywhere, like a shadow with a wagging tail. When Sam sat on his bedroom floor, drawing on scraps of paper, Aero curled up beside him, resting his head on Sam's leg. When Sam went to the backyard to play with sticks or simply stare at the clouds, Aero trotted after him, wagging his tail and nudging Sam's hand with his wet nose. It was as if Aero had been waiting his whole life to meet Sam. At first, Sam wasn't sure how to act. He wasn't used to someone or something being so eager to be with him. But Aero didn't need words. He just seemed to understand. When Sam made a little whistle or waved his hand, Aero's ears perked up, and he followed the gesture. If Sam pointed to the ground, Aero sat. If Sam patted his knees, Aero jumped up and wagged his tail, so hard it looked like it might fly off. For the first time, Sam felt truly heard. One morning, Sam and Aero went for a walk in the neighborhood. The air was crisp, and the sound of birds chirping filled the silence. Sam held the leash loosely, letting Aero sniff around and explore. As they passed a row of houses, a neighbor waved. Sam didn't wave back, but Aero barked once, as if to say hello for both of them. By the time they reached the park, the sun was high in the sky, warming the grass and making the playground equipment shimmer. Sam hesitated at the entrance. The park was always full of kids, and he usually avoided it. But Aero tugged gently on the leash, his eager eyes urging Sam forward. In the park, Sam found a quiet spot under a tree. He pulled a tennis ball from his pocket, one his dad had bought just for Aero. Sam tossed the ball, and Aero took off like a rocket, his black and white fur gleaming in the sunlight. He returned moments later, tail wagging, and dropped the ball at Sam's feet. The two of them played fetch for what felt like hours. Aero would race after the ball, sometimes leaping high to catch it midair, and then come bounding back with the happiest expression Sam had ever seen. Sam's lips curved into a smile without him even realizing it. Their game didn't go unnoticed. A group of kids playing nearby began to watch. One boy, about Sam's age, walked over. "Your dog is fast," the boy said. Sam didn't respond, but Aero did. He wagged his tail and barked, running circles around the boy as if inviting him to play. The boy laughed and picked up the ball, tossing it for Aero. Soon more kids joined in. They laughed and clapped as Aero showed off his speed and agility. One girl even patted Sam on the shoulder and said, "Your dog is amazing." Sam didn't know how to reply, but he didn't need to. Aero became his voice. The dog's playful antics brought the kids closer, and for the first time, Sam wasn't just the quiet boy sitting alone. He was part of the group, even if he didn't say a word. From a distance, Sam's parents watched. They had come to the park together, hoping to see their son enjoying the day. When they saw the group of kids surrounding Sam and Aero, tears filled his mom's eyes. "Look at him," she whispered. "He's happy." Sam's dad put an arm around her shoulders. "I think Aero's the best decision we ever made." Back under the tree, Sam tossed the ball one last time. Aero fetched it, his tail wagging furiously as he returned to Sam. This time, Sam knelt down and wrapped his arms around Aero's neck. The dog licked his face, making him giggle softly. That night, as Sam lay in bed, Aero curled up at his feet. Sam reached down, his fingers brushing through Aero's fur. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sam didn't feel invisible. He felt seen. He felt loved. Aero wasn't just a dog. He was Sam's friend, his voice, and his hope. And together, they were building a bond that couldn't be broken. Sam's therapist, Ms. Linda, had always been kind and patient. She never pushed him too hard, and she always spoke to him like a friend. One day, as Sam sat across from her in the small, cozy therapy room, Aero lying at his feet, Ms. Linda smiled warmly. "I've been thinking, Sam," she said, her voice soft and gentle. "What if we included Aero in our sessions? Dogs are amazing helpers. They can understand signals, and I think Aero could help you practice some nonverbal communication. What do you think?" Sam didn't answer out loud, but he looked down at Aero, who wagged his tail as if he already understood. Sam nodded slowly, a small flicker of hope in his green eyes. Over the next few weeks, Ms. Linda introduced simple hand signals they could use with Aero. It started small. A quick wave of the hand meant sit. A pointed finger meant stay. Sam watched carefully as Ms. Linda demonstrated, and then it was his turn. The first time Sam raised his hand to signal sit, Aero didn't move. Sam's cheeks flushed with frustration, and he tugged nervously at his hair. "It's okay," Ms. Linda said gently. "Aero is learning too. Let's try again." Sam tried once more, and this time Aero plopped down on the floor, his tail wagging like he'd just won a prize. Sam's lips curved into a small smile, and Ms. Linda clapped her hands softly. "See? You did it, Sam," she said. Day by day, Aero learned more signals, and so did Sam. A swipe of the hand meant come here. A quick pat on the knee meant jump up. Aero followed each command with perfect enthusiasm, his bright eyes locked on Sam as if he were the only person in the world. Sam's confidence grew with every small success. For the first time, he felt like he had a voice, one that didn't need words. Aero understood him perfectly, and that feeling was something Sam had never experienced before. At home, Aero brought a new kind of energy to the house. The once quiet living room was now filled with laughter and the sound of paws skittering across the floor. Sam's mom often found him and Aero playing together in the backyard, Sam's giggles carrying through the air as Aero chased after him. One evening, Sam's dad walked into the living room to find Sam teaching Aero a new trick. Sam waved his hand in a circle, and Aero spun around, his tail wagging furiously. Sam clapped his hands, laughing, and Aero barked in delight. "Wow," Sam's dad said, his voice thick with emotion. "I haven't heard him laugh like that in years." Sam's mom smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's like Aero understands him better than we ever could." The bond between Sam and Aero was something magical. It wasn't just about tricks or signals. It was about trust, love, and understanding. Aero didn't care that Sam couldn't speak. He didn't care about the things that made Sam different. To Aero, Sam was perfect just the way he was. One night, as Sam lay in bed, Aero curled up beside him, his warm fur pressed against Sam's leg. Sam reached down, his fingers running through Aero's soft coat. "Good boy, Aero," Sam whispered, his voice barely audible, but filled with gratitude. Aero lifted his head, his ears perking up. He licked Sam's hand, as if to say, I'm here for you. Always. For the first time in a long time, Sam felt truly happy. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And it was all because of a dog who had given him a voice when he couldn't find his own. The breakthrough wasn't just about communication. It was about connection. It was about love. And in that moment, as Sam drifted off to sleep with Aero by his side, he knew he wasn't alone anymore. Progress is never a straight path. For Sam, even with Aero by his side, life wasn't always easy. School remained a tough place, and some kids didn't understand him. It started with whispers. A few kids in Sam's class would point and giggle, their voices low but sharp enough to cut. "Why doesn't he ever talk?" one boy asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Another girl snickered, adding, "Maybe he just doesn't know how." Sam heard every word, though he pretended not to. His chest tightened, and his fingers tugged at his hair, a habit that only seemed to encourage more teasing. The mean words circled in his mind, making him feel small, like he didn't belong. The worst moment came during a group project in class. The teacher asked each group to present their work to the class. Sam's group looked at him expectantly, waiting for him to take his turn. His hands shook as he stared at the paper in front of him. The words blurred, and his mouth felt like it was glued shut. "Come on, Sam," someone whispered impatiently. "Just say something." But he couldn't. The silence grew heavier with every second, and eventually, one of his group members sighed and took over. Sam sank into his chair, his face hot with shame. The teacher didn't scold him, but the pity in her eyes made him feel even worse. That afternoon, Sam walked home with his head down, his shoulders slumped. He barely noticed the crisp autumn leaves crunching under his feet or the birds chirping overhead. All he could think about was how he had failed again. When he got home, Aero was waiting by the door, his tail wagging like always. The moment Sam walked in, Aero trotted over and nudged his hand with his wet nose. Sam didn't say anything, but Aero didn't need words. He sat down and rested his head in Sam's lap, looking up at him with big, understanding eyes. Sam sighed and ran his fingers through Aero's soft fur. The motion was soothing, like a calm rhythm that helped slow his racing thoughts. Aero stayed still, his warm presence like a silent promise. "I'm here. You're not alone." In that quiet moment, Sam felt the weight on his chest ease just a little. Later that evening, Sam's mom noticed how quiet he was during dinner. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Rough day?" she asked softly. Sam nodded, his eyes focused on his plate. He didn't have to explain. His mom seemed to understand. "You know," she said, her voice warm, "it's okay to have bad days. They don't last forever. And you've got Aero to help you through them." Sam glanced at Aero, who was lying by his chair, watching him with those loyal, loving eyes. Aero thumped his tail on the floor, as if agreeing with Sam's mom. That night, Sam sat on his bed with Aero beside him. He picked up a small notebook and a pencil, something Ms. Linda had given him to write down his thoughts. Slowly, he began to draw. It wasn't much, just a sketch of Aero chasing a ball in the park, but it made him feel better. Aero leaned over and sniffed the notebook, then licked Sam's hand, making him smile for the first time all day. Life wasn't perfect, and the challenges didn't disappear. But in Aero, Sam had a friend who understood him without needing words. And even on the hardest days, that made all the difference. The world outside was noisy and full of unkindness, but at home, in the quiet company of his best friend, Sam found peace. The school's annual open house was a big event. Students, parents, and teachers all gathered in the classrooms to celebrate the children's achievements. For most kids, it was exciting, a chance to show off their work and shine in front of everyone. But for Sam, it was terrifying. When Sam's teacher, Mrs. Adams, suggested that Aero attend the open house as an emotional support animal, Sam's parents immediately agreed. "Aero seems to bring out the best in him," Mrs. Adams had said. "Maybe having his friend there will make him feel more confident." Sam wasn't so sure. The idea of standing in front of a crowd, even with Aero by his side, made his stomach churn. But when the day arrived, Aero was ready. That afternoon, the classroom buzzed with activity. Parents chatted with teachers, students laughed with their friends, and colorful art projects lined the walls. Sam sat quietly at his desk, his green eyes scanning the room nervously. Aero sat at his feet, calm and patient, his tail sweeping the floor every time someone walked by. "Wow, is that your dog?" a boy from another class asked, stopping to look at Aero. Sam nodded, offering a small smile. Aero wagged his tail and gave a friendly bark, drawing laughter from the group of kids nearby. When it was time for the presentations, Mrs. Adams clapped her hands to get everyone's attention. "All right, everyone, let's hear from our amazing students about the projects they've worked so hard on." One by one, Sam's classmates stood up and spoke. Some talked about science experiments, while others shared stories they had written or showed off their artwork. Sam listened quietly, his heart pounding louder with each passing moment. His turn was coming, and the thought of standing in front of so many people made his palms sweat. Finally, Mrs. Adams said, "And now, let's hear from Sam. He's going to tell us about his art project. And we're lucky to have his wonderful dog, Aero, with us today." All eyes turned to Sam. He froze, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. The words he wanted to say were stuck, like they always were. His heart raced, and he felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. Sensing his distress, Aero stood up and nudged Sam's leg with his nose. He looked up at Sam, his intelligent eyes full of encouragement. Then he wagged his tail, as if to say, "You've got this." Sam took a deep breath. Slowly, he stood up and walked to the front of the room, Aero trotting beside him. The room fell silent, all eyes on the boy and his dog. Sam reached the front and looked at his artwork, a colorful drawing of Aero running through the park. It was simple but full of life, just like Aero. He raised his hand and made a small signal. Aero sat down beside him, his tail wagging softly. Using the hand signals he had practiced, Sam began to explain his drawing. He gestured toward the bright green grass in the picture, then pointed to the sky, showing how he had chosen the colors to match a sunny day. Each movement was slow and careful, but the room watched in awe. Aero stayed by his side, occasionally looking up at him as if cheering him on. When Sam finished, there was a pause. Then, the room erupted in applause. His classmates clapped and cheered, some even standing up. "That was amazing," one girl said. "Great job, Sam," another boy added. At the back of the room, Sam's parents stood together, their eyes brimming with tears. His mom wiped her cheek with a tissue, whispering, "I can't believe it. He did it." His dad nodded, his voice thick with pride. "Eros not just a dog. He's a miracle." Sam turned to look at the crowd, and for the first time, he didn't feel scared. He smiled a real, bright smile and gave Aero a pat on the head. Aero barked happily, wagging his tail like he'd just won a prize. As the open house continued, people came up to Sam to compliment his artwork and meet Aero. Sam didn't say much, but he didn't need to. Aero was his voice, his courage, and his biggest cheerleader. That night, as Sam lay in bed with Aero curled up beside him, he replayed the day in his mind. He had done something he never thought he could do, and it was all because of Aero. Sam whispered softly, "Thank you, Aero." Aero opened one eye, wagged his tail, and nestled closer, as if to say, "Always." For Sam, the open house wasn't just a school event. It was a moment of triumph, a step forward, and with Aero by his side, he knew there were more steps to come. Life had changed for Sam, and it was all because of Aero. At school, Sam was no longer invisible. He showed his classmates the hand gestures he used with Aero, and soon they were practicing alongside him, laughing as Aero followed every command with enthusiasm. Aero became a beloved part of the school, attending events and lifting spirits wherever he went. Sam's confidence grew in ways his parents had only dreamed of. At home, he started expressing himself through drawings and notes, making his thoughts and feelings clearer. One evening, he handed his parents a drawing of their family, including Aero, smiling under a sunny sky. His mom wiped away tears. "You've come so far, Sam," she said, her voice full of pride. Sam's world continued to expand. He participated in group activities and even joined a class play, using hand gestures as part of his role. His classmates cheered him on, and Aero wagged his tail proudly from the audience. One summer evening, Sam and Aero sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset. Aero leaned against him, his loyal presence a constant comfort. "You know," Sam's mom said, joining him, Aero didn't just help you. He gave all of us a fresh start. Sam looked at her, then at Aero, and smiled softly. That night, as Sam lay in bed, Aero curled up at his feet. Sam reached down, stroking his fur. "Thank you, Aero," he whispered. Aero wagged his tail in reply, as if to say, "Always."